They were not free white persons or called white persons until mid-1800s. So when you see documents that refer to Europeans as white people prior to 1800, it's fraud. It's a lie. It's made retroactive. No different than when you see these Moors referred to as black or Negro people made retroactive in history. It is a fraud that goes past early 1800s. Absolute fraud. Are you following me? For the Romans to rule in the Maghreb, they needed a code of rules of law because all of the Moors did not succumb or convert. Some of them fought, went into the mountains. Some of them went into the swamps. The Europeans start calling them different tribal names that are usually corruptions of ancient Algonquian names, like Cherokee, Blackfoot, Seminole, Nanaco, etc. They're all tribes of Moors. Now, for your information, so that we can clear this up, and this is another point too that I want to make, and brother, this is another point that I know your book is done. However, it might be good for you, since it's not totally published yet, that you might use this in a certain part because of your degrees that you got in what they call Indian studies. How did the Moors become called in North America Indians? Is it generally known amongst you? If anyone knows, raise your hand. Let me tell you. See this tassel here? Now mine's a little red, but it's originally black, and I've had a lot of these. Every time I buy one, they turn red. I don't know why. They do. All my tassels turn red, so I just stopped changing them. But the dye that is used to dye these tassels is called indigo. And it's from a berry that's found strictly in Morocco. Are you following me? Yeah. Also, you ever heard, like when they talk about a lot of the Moors, like in the islands and in the south areas of Amexem, and they talk about some parts of our ancient religious rituals, and they call it voodoo? Yeah. You know where it come from? Do you know where it come from? That's a miscorruption of a word. Hindu. Do you know where that comes from? It comes from Hindi. Do you know where that comes from? That comes from a place called Perrault. Do you know geographically where Perrault is? Perrault is just below Tianyi, that you call China. It's not China, it's Tianyi. Perrault is just below Tianyi, and you know it today as India. India is not India, and those people are not Indians. They're Moabite and Hittites. Moabite and Hittites. Three major dynasties made up that astrological Sanskrit powerful culture that you know in Perrault and Tibet, etc. area. Those dynasties are, and take your time so you can write this down, the Mauryan dynasty, the Nanda dynasty, and the Gupta dynasty. All of those dynasties are ancient Moabite Moorish dynasties. And it is the Moors who named Peru Hindustan. And this is where the name for Peru become Hindustan. And that's a few thousand years ago. Now, Hindustan, due to corruption in European sociology, as Europeans have been conquering Asia and Africa, called them Hindis and Hindus, where the name Indian came from, which is a fiction. And if you think that what I just said to you is untrue, talk to a Hindustani on the line that I just talked to you and watch them confirm it. And some would be surprised that you knew. How did you find out? Also, you got to remember that the Moors controlled the spice trade, the gold, etc., 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 because the Moors governed the planet, ruled the 7 continents and the 7 seas. Now, we're going to cut part of the history and just go to certain points that are you're familiar with, so that you can relate to what I'm saying. You know the story of Columbus? They tell you about Columbus sailed the ocean blue, the old deal. And after they defeated the Moors in 1492, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand merged their kingdoms and funded his voyage to the west. Well, the voyage to the west, pay attention to that. The voyage to the west is the voyage to the Maghreb. When you study European history, and you study from the Battle of Tours near Poitiers, France, back to the Crusades, back to the Punic Wars, etc., which is a series of the same wars, actually. For the most part, you think of what you call medieval history and late European history, because the Europeans used that year, 1492, as the pivotal year, or as the axis year, to distinguish ancient and modern history. Why? Because 1492 is the political year that is recognized as the final of the Moors, even though they weren't totally collapsed. That's the general year they used to recognize the fall of the ancient empires. And now, what they call European beginnings, when Christendom began to dominate the world. It was not till the Moors fell that the rest of the Asiatic nations fell. They had no chance, because it's the Moors who are also referred to as Turks. So don't get confused, think that Turkey and Moors is different people. When the Christians refer us to as the Moors and Turks, keeping them in check, they're all Moors. They just did that to divide you so that you couldn't trace your history.